This is a true pleasure. I get to talk to one of the greatest offensive linemen in NFL history, a member of the Green Bay Packers for most of his career, also the Cowboys. He went on to coach numerous teams. I remember coaching the Packers against my Chicago Bears back in the day. NFL Hall of Famer Forrest Gregg. How you doing, Forrest?
I'm doing okay.
How did you end up going to SMU? Because I know you're from Texas, but wasn't Texas a bigger football school back then?
SMU was in the Southwest Conference, and they were probably as good as Texas at that time. But
Now,
my high school football coach went to SMU, and he encouraged me to go. He thought I'd like it there.
you're from Birthright. Where is Birthright?
Okay, Birthright is 10 miles north of Sulphur Springs. It's between Sulphur Springs and Paris, Texas.
Were you an offensive lineman in high school, or did you play a couple positions?
I played both ways. We ran a single wing in high school, and I played the what they call inside tackle. We had unbalanced line, and I played inside tackle, and did a lot of pulling in and a lot of double teaming and I played all sports in high school. Played basketball, baseball, on the track team.
Were you any good at any of those?
I was a good basketball player. I wasn't good enough to get a scholarship at a Southwest Conference school, but for a high school player, I was good.
I never realized how many great football players SMU had. You had Doak Walker, Don Meredith, Hayden Fry. You had some good players back in the day.
Yeah, you checked up on me, didn't you?
I checked up on you.
Yeah, it was. Doak Walker was. Kyle Rote was there at SMU, and so we had some great players there.
Now, what was it like for a Texas boy to get drafted and have to go up to Green Bay, Wisconsin?
I was drafted with the Packers, number 2, 1956, and I wasn't for sure where Green Bay was. I had to get my atlas out and check. I thought they were in Minnesota or somewhere like that, or Illinois. I didn't know. So I found out right quick where they were from, where they were. And Packers weren't very good about that time.
Because the Packers were good under the Curry-Lambeau years, and then there was kind of like a lull, and then Lombardi came there, and he transformed the team again.
Yes, that's true.
What was it like when you got to training camp? How much of an adjustment was that from college?
Well, excuse me, I've got stuff in my throat. It was a change because a lot more pass blocking was required. Out of you, we ran a T formation, and it was a great deal different. A lot of outstanding football players. competition was fierce.
Did you play both ways with the Packers? Because I know several of the Packers did, or did you just play offensive line?
When I got to Green Bay, they weren't for sure where they were going to play me. They didn't know whether they were going to play me on offense or defense. So I got to play a little bit of defense during training camp. And we opened with the Bears that year. And Bears beat us. And I remember I think I played about 3 plays on defense. And I played on special teams.
Did you have a preference, offense or defense?
Pardon? Or did I have a preference? Yeah, I really
Yes, sir.
wanted to play. I really wanted to play defense. I thought I could play defensive end and get your name called over the loudspeaker and make a tackle.
Because you would have been on the line with, Willie Davis and you, and then you would have had Dave Robinson later on and Herb Adderley in the defense.
Well, Willie came there in '60. He came there. I was there in '56. I was drafted in '56. Went to the Army. Was in the Army at 57. I missed one full season and one game. And Willie and I played. Willie Davis and I played football together at Fort Carson, Colorado. And that's where I first met Willie. And then after he got out of the Army, I got out of the Army. He went back to the Cleveland Browns, and then the next year was traded to Green Bay. And in Green Bay, '58, we had a terrible season. The year before Lombardi came, it was 110. We were 110-1.
Who was the one lost to that year? Do you remember?
No, we were 1.
Oh, one. Who was your one? Who was your one? Who was your one win against?
I have to think. I think. Let's see.
I thought only the Bears won one game in 1969. I never knew the Packers went that bad.
Yes, they were. And I can't remember who we beat. I think it might have been Philadelphia.
So then Vince Lombardi comes in. What did you make of him at first?
Excuse me. When after the season was over in '58, I went back home to Dallas and got a job and finished school. I lacked 3 hours credit finishing my degree, so I went back to school and I got a job and went back to school. Worked and went to school. And I heard that they had fired Scooter McLean, who was head coach, and hired some guy named Vince Lombardi, an assistant coach for the New York Giants. And I didn't know anything about him. I went to some SMU function, sports function, downtown Dallas there in spring of '59. And I ran into a friend of mine named Tiny Goss. Tiny played for the Cleveland Browns and then was traded to the New York Giants. And so Tiny asked me, he said, you know anything about that Lombardi that they hired in Green Bay? And I said, no, I don't, Tiny. I said, do you know anything about him? He said, yeah. So he's a real bastard. And that was my first knowledge of Vince Lombardi. And when I went to training camp and didn't unpack my bag right away because I didn't know what I was dealing with. But he turned out to be the greatest coach of all time.
What made him so good?
He was a disciplinarian. He as Henry Jordan said one time, he treats us all the same. And they asked Henry, he said, how's that, Henry? He said, like dogs. But the thing about it is, you ever heard the statement, tough but fair?
Yes.
And he was that. He treated everybody the same. Didn't make any difference whether it was Bart Starr or Jim Taylor, Paul Horn, whoever it was. You messed up. You didn't perform up to his expectations. You heard about it. And I think one of the greatest things that made him great, he had a lot of it. He expected to win, and he had great expectations of you. And you thought, well, he thinks I'm good enough to do this. I must be able to. And so that's kind of guy he was. And he was a good football coach, a knowledgeable coach. We had a physical team, and he expected us to win regardless of who it was.
Well, you had yourself a pretty good offense there. You had Bart Starr at quarterback. You had Paul Hornung and Jim Taylor in the backfield. You had some pretty decent receivers, Max McGee, people like that.
Yes, Boyd Dollar, Max McGee.
Right. And some pretty good offensive linemen, too.
Yes, we did. That's some good ones. We had a talented football team. Well, that was basically the team. You look back, not necessarily in the starting positions, but on the team. You look back, and it was basically the same team that went 1-10-1. And so the talent was there. What it needed to happen was it needed to be put together. And as I said, he had great expectations of us, and would not accept less.
Paul Hornig had to drive him nuts because Paul Hornig liked to party and drink, and he was kind of like a party guy. How did Lombardi deal with that?
Took money out of Paul's pockets. That's how he did it.
Did Paul and him ever have any friction, or Paul basically respected him and basically?
Paul respected Lombardi. Paul was a great football player, and he was a team player, and he never, not one player ever got away with anything. I mean, as far as breaking the rules were concerned, he just didn't get away with it. You missed a meeting, fine. You're late for a meeting, fine. You break curfew and get caught, fine.
How did you feel when Vince Lombardi wrote in his book that you were the finest player you ever coached?
Well, I can't even begin to tell you how I felt. Of all the great players that he coached at Green Bay, New York, Washington, and for him to say that was made me feel very humble. And
did you have a favorite moment in the NFL when you were playing?
I think probably one of the biggest games that we ever played, as far as I was concerned, was the '61 NFL championship game against the Giants. And in high school, when I was a high school player, we had a pretty good high school team, but we never won our district. We never got into the playoffs. When I was at SMU, we had a lot of fine football players, and we never got into the playoffs or went to a bowl. We never went to a bowl game. And I remember running out on that field at Lambeau Field in 1961. I was Jerry Kramer had been hurt early in the season, and they moved me from right tackle, where I had made All-Pro, and moved me to right guard to take Jerry's place while he was hurt. And I remember being introduced and running out on the field in that game, and it was an awesome feeling. And the next thing I wanted to do was I wanted to win that ball game, and we did. We were able to score pretty good that day, and we beat the Giants for, at that time, was called the World Championship.
And you guys also got to play in the first Super Bowl. What was that like?
Oh, that was a big time. The biggest thing about that Super Bowl was it was the uncertainty of the competition that you were playing against. You know, we knew some of those guys coming out of college and played for the Kansas City Chiefs, but there's a lot of them that we didn't know, and the only thing you could judge them by was their size, and watching them play against somebody who you didn't know anything about. You didn't know how good the competition was. And the one thing that I'd say going into that ball game, one thing was the expectations. We were picked to win, and we were representing the old guard, the National Football League, and we were expected to win. And we were able to pull it off, and that was outstanding. Never saw so much media in my life as we saw during that week prior to that game. We went out to California and worked out, because we were playing that game in the Coliseum. And we went to Santa Barbara and worked out there. And we had media following us all week long. Television, newspapers, Associated Press, radio, you name it. Henry Jordan loved it.
How big was the rivalry with the Bears? Did Lombardi want to beat Hallis that bad every time you played, or was it just like any other game?
Never. It was never like any other game with the Bears. From the time I went there in 1956, where I remember we opened with the Bears, and everybody in town reminded you, it's Bear Week. It's Bear Week. And I didn't realize what the competition was like. And he wanted to beat George House, but he wanted to beat everybody. so that was no different.
What defensive lineman did you enjoy going up against the most?
Well, you don't really enjoy going up against them. the Bears defensive linemen, I remember most of Ed O'Bradovich. And Ed and I banged heads together usually 3 times a year, because it seemed like to me we always played the Bears in preseason too, and twice during the regular season. And Ed and I competed. We competed against each other, and we were both about the same age. I think maybe I was a year older than Ed. And he was one of my favorite players, because he asked no quarter and he gave no quarter. He wasn't a dirty football player, but he was a tough football player.
And Doug Atkins wasn't too shabby either.
Yeah, and I didn't have to spend much time blocking him, because I was on the other side. Doug Atkins was a great player. biggest man I've ever seen in a pair of shoulder pads.
I mean, the Bears, I mean, you went from Bill Georgia, middle linebacker, to Dick Butkus, and you went against both of them.
Yes. Yeah, they were both great football players.
So, so who was the better middle linebacker, George, Butkus, or Ray Nitschke?
I got it figured like this. Ray Nitschke said he's better, and he was my teammate. I would have to believe him. Dick Butkus said he was better. Bill George said he was better. So I don't ask me to pick. They were all great football players, and it was fun playing against them because you knew that you were playing against the best. And that's one way to measure yourself, is when you're playing against the best. How do you stand up?
Now, you ended your career with the Dallas Cowboys playing for a coach who seemed the opposite of Lombardi and Tom Landry, and you end up winning a Super Bowl. What was that season and that experience with Dallas like?
That was a great year for me. Dallas had been to the Super Bowl the year before I got there, and how I happened to get there was I had retired at Green Bay and moved to Dallas, and I was selling sporting goods, and Dallas had a bunch of offensive linemen to get hurt during training camp. And Tom Landry called me, asked me if I would be interested in playing. And I said, where do I report? And I remember getting my football shoes and reporting out to the training quarters, which was just north of where I lived. In Dallas, I lived a little close to SMU. And I went in there, went in that dressing room, and I had my football shoes in my hand. And boy, those guys looked at me like, what in the world is this guy doing here? And finally, I got around the room almost to my locker, and I ran into Herb Adderley, who had played at Green Bay with me. And so he and I got to talking, and then the next guy I ran into was Bob Lilly. And we'd played against each other a lot, and we knew each other well. And he was a welcoming sight to see, knowing that they've got a great player like this on the team, a great player like Herb Adderley, and this team had a chance to win. And when we did, Tom Landry was a great football coach. Tom was one of the most knowledgeable football coaches I was ever with. Offense or defense, he knew the P's and Q's of both sides of the ball. And he was a good teacher. And the system that he used was a lot like the system at Green Bay, because Lombardi had been the offensive coordinator at the New York Giants, and Tom had been the defensive coordinator. So they both adapted that Giant way of doing things. So that wasn't totally strange to me, except Dallas's offense was much more complicated than Green Bay's.
What made you want to get into coaching?
I always wanted to coach, and I thought maybe what I would do is I had a good job offered to me in the sporting goods business, and Bill Forrester, who was a teammate of mine at Green Bay, was working for the same people, and it was a way of making a good living. And I thought in the back of my mind that I would like to coach. Being at Dallas, and I guess one of the things that excuse me, one of the things that I said, well, I can't be Vince Lombardi. I'm not like him. And if that's what it takes to win in football, I don't know whether I can do that or not. And then to go out and play for a guy like Tom Landry, who was in his was similar in a lot of ways to what Vince did at Green Bay, but not the disciplinarian, but expected. Tom had expectations of his players also. I think that's one thing that I think that they both learned from Jim Lee Howe at New York. And there was a lot of peer pressure with the Cowboys. I guess that's the best way to describe it. If you were the starter, you were expected to perform in a winning attitude and a winning performance. And I noticed after, I never was the starter there, but I noticed the players. If you didn't perform well in a game, some guy beat you and sacked the quarterback, your teammates kind of look down their nose at you. And I'd say that was one of the differences in Lombardi and Landry. Landry wasn't as vocal.
When you coach against the Bears, the guy you went up against, Mike Ditka, seemed like he had more of a Lombardi personality.
Yes, he that was Mike. Mike wanted to win, expected to win, and he was at Green Bay. I mean, at Dallas when I was there. And the thing that helped me playing for Tom, it kind of, and you know, you asked me about the coaching. When did I start thinking about coaching? And I thought I can't be like Vince Lombardi and win, because you've got to be yourself. And I thought, there's Tom Mander, who's exactly the opposite as Vince Lombardi, and he won. So he was himself. He wasn't anybody else and didn't try to be anybody else. And that's the same way it was with Vince. And I thought, well, if that's the case, then maybe I've got a chance to win as a coach. That's what put me in the direction of coaching. I knew after that season that I probably wouldn't play anymore, or maybe shouldn't play anymore. So I started looking for a coaching job when that season was over. And I got an offensive line coaching job at San Diego.
And then you coached the Browns, and after the Browns, you went to Canada for a year, coached Toronto, and then you go to the Bengals, and your second season in Cincinnati, you're in the Super Bowl.
Yes.
You must have been doing something right.
I think two things. I think I was doing something right, and I had some players that knew how to do it.
And you had a young offensive lineman who a lot of people compare to you, one of the top 2 linemen of all time, Anthony Munoz.
Yes, sir. He's a great one.
So you taught him everything you knew.
Well, I'd like to claim that, but he was just a fine football player, and he was one of the best.
So how bad did you want to beat the Bears when Mike Ditka was coaching? Or was it just any other game?
Can't say it was any other game. Bears and Packers had a rivalry. And it's an old rivalry. And going back to my playing days in Green Bay, it's their week. We'd be out practicing. Airplane would fly over the practice field. Everybody would look up and say, that's probably George Howe scouting us.
Now, after Cincinnati, you become the Packers coach, and you're replacing your quarterback there, Bart Starr. What was that like, going back to Green Bay as coach?
Well, it was a good experience. I liked coaching at Green Bay. I had some good memories of that.
Did you feel bad about replacing Bart? Did you ask for his approval, or it was just a job?
No, you don't. If you're interviewing for a job, you keep it quiet. You don't tell or ask anybody. Ordinarily, I would talk to him. If it's probably been any other, if it's been any other job. I probably would have.
I forgot, a former teammate of yours at SMU was Raymond Berry. We're going to be talking to Raymond Berry soon. Do you have any Raymond Berry stories from college?
Oh, yes. Raymond, when we were in college, Raymond and I played side by side. Yeah, I played left tackle, he played left end. And he was also at that time we were playing both ways. And Raymond was a smart ball player. He looked at the other people's offense and kind of figured out what they were trying to do to us over there on the left side. And I never had to worry about the play getting around the corner before I had a chance to make a tackle. And that was good for the team and good for me. Raymond was you wouldn't think it, he's always a mild-mannered guy, but he was a tough and physical football player. He grew up in a football home. His father was a high school coach at Paris, Texas, and had been there most of Raymond's life. So Raymond grew up in a football family. He also had great hands. He
I see Dave Robinson's going to the Hall of Fame. A lot of Packers did. When is Jerry Kramer going to go in?
Hey, man, you asking me something I don't know. I don't have anything to do with it. And I'm happy for Dave. I'm happy for anybody that gets in the Hall of Fame that played with me.
Just as long as they're not a Bear.
Well, there's some expectation there, too. Some of those Bears were pretty good football players.
What was going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame like for you?
It was the next thing to be great feeling compared to things that happen to you during your career. And you think, I never thought that I would be in the Football Hall of Fame. I wanted to be the best I could be as a player. I strived to be the best that I could be. I wanted to win football games for Vince Lombardi. And I thought about the Hall of Fame, but I didn't know whether it would ever happen or not. There's very few people make it. You just look over. I don't know what the numbers are right now, but last time I counted, there's not a lot of them there. and to be inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame was just a dream come true.
Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Okay, I know y'all say hello to Raymond when you talk to him.
I will.
Can I tell you a little story right quick?
Yes, go ahead.
Recently, I've been, last a couple of years ago, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And you're probably aware of that. But anyway, we were talking about Packers and Bears. And one of the nicest letters I received and ever received was from a guy named Ed Obradovich, who wrote me a letter and gave me a lot of encouragement. Fighting this disease. And there's some things in your life that you'll never forget. And I'll never forget that letter that I got from Ed and the encouraging words that he gave me. And I'm just thinking he's a big old guy who was a tough football player who played every down to the best of his ability and never asked any quarter and never gave any. And he's writing his old enemy with letters and with words of encouragement.
Have you talked to Ed since then?
Yes, I have.
He's a great guy.
Yes, he is. He really is. And I'll never forget that.
Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you. And keep fighting.
Okay, I will. And I always look forward to that Packer Bear game.
We don't have to ask who you root for.
Oh, gosh. Well,
All right.
hey, you guys, thanks for calling.